Hi, and welcome to the Restoration Road. Today, my guest is Kent Benson, who won organization rated as the 22nd best basketball player of all time. Kent was the center on the perfect season, 32-0, 1976 Indiana University Hoosiers national champion basketball team, the last college team to go undefeated in a season. Kent, a believer, is going to share his story of restoration. He's been a good friend for many years, and I can't wait for you to hear what's inside his heart. Kent Benson, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Mitch. It's a pleasure and a blessing.
My good friend.
Thank you.
I thought there's so much I want to talk to you about, and try to get it in one show is going to be challenging, but why don't we pick it up where you surrender your life to Christ in high school, and why?
That was a long time ago. That was in 1972. I was a sophomore in high school, and I was one of 5 athletes that was selected to go to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes National Conference. When I got there, I had a great time. We competed in all kinds of athletic events, and we had a huddle session where we would talk about different aspects of being a Christian and sportsmanship, and what it's like to walk in a Christian manner. And I learned a lot from it and was blessed. But on Thursday night, the speaker was Bob Vogel, who played for the Baltimore Colts. Bob was a big guy, about 6'8", and he got up in front of about 1,500 of us athletes and talked about his love for Jesus Christ and how he, even though he was a rugged football player, being meek didn't mean weak. And all the things that he said seemed to hit home. And what was more amazing was it was the same things that my mom had been talking to me that I thought I let go in one ear and out the other, but they stuck, and it was like he was talking directly to me. And he shared a scripture, 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 6 through 16, which talks about being a good Christian example. And at that time, I was starting to have a lot of success in basketball, and with my size, 6'9", 10, at that point in time, I was a big guy, and with that success, because I didn't have a really rooted and grounded foundation and a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I knew who God was, knew who Jesus was, but I didn't have that personal relationship. So when I had to start having the success, my head started swelling up and everything. I'm just a sophomore in high school.
Lighting it up at Newcastle, the biggest high school gym in the world, right?
Largest and finest high school gymnasium in the world. Seats 10,000 for a high school basketball game.
And you had that many coming to your games?
Oh, yeah. Back then, and Steve Alford did too. Steve Alford is from Newcastle, who's, again, another strong Christian man. So anyway, after Bob shared 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 6 through 16, talking about being a good Christian example. It was all the things that my mom and dad had been talking to me about and my responsibility of being a good example, because I had, kids who would emulate me or imitate me out on the basketball court, or, my brothers or sisters or classmates or whomever. And it really finally hit home. And what was even more so, it was his testimony and his strength of being a Christian and playing in a very tough professional sport, football. He was very much a macho man, but he loved the Lord and shared that with us. And that night, I got with my huddle leader. His name was Greg. And Greg and I prayed, and I asked the Lord to come into my life. I asked him to forgive my sins. And I didn't elevate and levitate or anything like that. I just had a tremendous peace come over me, and that peace surpasseth all understanding. And was so blessed by it. And from that point, that was the beginning of the foundation for my Christian testimony.
Did that change the way you played basketball at all? Did you have a different perspective, or can you think of anything that changed out of that? But if you were a good Catholic guy, and going to church all the time, so maybe there wasn't a lot of change. What was it like for you?
Well, I think the biggest thing was when he talked about being meek as a Christian man didn't mean being weak.
Yeah.
And I got those two confused before he had talked about that and everything. And so I think it was really a springboard for me of becoming more aggressive and asserting myself on the basketball court. And from a very positive standpoint, instead of me becoming weak, I became stronger because I understood what meek meant.
That's powerful. Well, talk about the coaches, the college coaches that came to recruit you and what that process was like.
Of all the colleges that I had an opportunity to go to, I narrowed it down to 4 universities. Notre Dame. Any idea why?
Digger Phelps?
Digger Phelps, but being Catholic.
Okay.
Okay, and my mom and grandmother and all my aunts loved Digger, and my sisters and all. Digger's a great guy.
Oh, yeah.
Loved Digger, but plus I had a cousin that was a great running back in the early 70s, Andy Huff at Notre Dame.
Oh.
Yeah, so there was some family ties there as well. Second was Purdue. Because of my agricultural background and growing up around the farm and showing dairy cattle and what have you. Had a lot of friends, a lot of my classmates and friends went to Purdue and great friends with a lot of the players, even to this day. And so thankful for their friendship and relationship and all. Well, from there, it was Indiana was number 3 and number 4 was Kentucky. And
wow, what a choice.
So first visit was to Notre Dame and had a great visit, but I just didn't feel like I fit in. I loved Digger and everything. I made all 4 of my visits within a matter of 2 weeks because I wanted to be one right on top of the other, so I could compare them.
Apples to apples.
Then the next visit was Purdue. Had a great visit at Purdue and being with all the players, Gerald Thomas and Jerry Nichols and Bruce Parkinson. I could go right on down the line, all the guys that I'm still great friends with, and so thankful for their friendship. And loved the players. Just didn't feel that I could click with Coach Fred Schaus at that time. Then my next visit was to Indiana University, and I fell in love with the players, had a great time, felt that I had a real relationship there, not only with the players, but with Coach Knight, because coming to Indiana, you know, number one, the players tell you how Coach Knight's going to be. The assistant coaches tell you how Coach Knight's going to be, and of course, Coach Knight tells you how Coach Knight's going to be. So I knew right there was nothing being hid. He was very straight up, and I saw an opportunity with the quality of not only the talent of the individuals on the team, but the quality of the individuals of the team, which was very impressive. And I made a decision right then that I wanted to come to Indiana.
Wow.
And so I'm sitting in Coach Knight's office, and I tell him that I'm ready to sign my Big Ten letter of intent. Back then, you had to sign the Big Ten letter of intent before you could sign a national letter of intent to attend the university. And so we're sitting there, and he says, there's no need for you to go to Kentucky for your visit. And he says, well, we'll just call Joe B. Hall and let him know that you're coming to Indiana. I said, okay. So he dials the phone and says, Joe B. Hall, please, Bob Knight calling. I'm thinking, well, he's going to say Kent Benson and has decided not to go to Kentucky. He's coming to Indiana. So Joe B. Hall gets on the phone, and Coach Knight takes the phone and hands it to me.
Oh, my goodness.
You know, here I'm an 18-year-old, and I've already made a commitment to this coach, and I tell him that I'm coming to Indiana, and there's no reason for me to visit. And he says, Kent, we've already made all these arrangements. We got people coming to the big celebration, and we've done all this. He says, I don't care if you come to Indiana, but you got to come on this visit.
So what was it like your freshman year?
Coach Knight is very bombastic, very to the point and everything. There's no doubt you knew where Coach Knight stood at every point in time.
And it sounds like to a certain extent that's refreshing to you. Like you don't want to have the uncertainty. Just tell me what you want me to do and how you want me to do it.
Exactly, because we were always prepared mentally and physically, and we outran people because we were in better conditioning. And why were we in better conditioning? Because our conditioning was so excruciating that when it came to a game, it was kind of a piece of cake, you know. So, but as far as the mental aspect, Coach always kept us prepared. And one of his famous sayings is, the mental is to the physical as 4 is to 1. The mental is 4 times greater than the physical. And that has always stayed with me, because, you know, a person can be very talented physically, but if he lets his mind drift away from his God-given talents and ability and not apply himself properly, or not be mentally prepared to play. A lot of guys, when they're going up to shoot a free throw, it's a mental thing.
Yes.
No doubt that they can shoot the free throw,
yes.
and they know how to shoot it. They wouldn't be playing the game in that situation, but it's a mental thing. And I see so many kids today, a lot of times they're not mentally prepared to play the game, or they allow themselves to get out of that mental preparation and drift into wanting to showboat or do things outside the scope of the game plan the coach has for them.
Well, I'd love for you to talk about the 75 and 76 seasons, one of the most unbelievable runs in the history of college basketball.
Well, thank you. We were a great team. There's no doubt about it. And like I said before, not only great talent, but great individuals. Guys that are just class acts all across the board. 1975 season, we made it to Mid-East Regional. We were undefeated. We were 31-0. And we're playing against Kentucky and in the Mid-East Regional, and end up getting beat 92-90. And prior to that, though, the thing that you got to remember is Scott May broke his arm. He broke his arm in the Purdue game, and John Laskowski came in and took up the slack like he wasn't even missing. And unfortunately, we got beat. But you know what? In that locker room, we just made a commitment to ourselves, to each and every one of us, that we were going to come back. And the only way we could get better is to go 32-0. Actually, it was 33-0, but it wasn't actually recorded because we played the Russians,
right,
and beat them handily in the very first preseason game. So
of 76,
of 1976.
Okay.
Yeah. After we got beat by Kentucky.
Well, talk about that season. Didn't Coach Knight even say that his expectation was that this team should not lose a game? That would be the only way he'd be satisfied, or and that you would be satisfied with yourself? Absolutely.
He felt that the talent that we had, our work ethic, our focus, and of course our loss then had put us in a position where we wouldn't be satisfied unless we won the national championship and do it in an undefeated manner. We knew that if we executed his game plan, which we bought into heart and soul, and play the team defense, which is unusual today. But our team defense, our offense, our motion offense that he ran, he could give clinics on it and show people how to run it, and they could watch film after film, but they couldn't stop it because we continually executed it, and execution. And the more you execute it, doesn't matter what people throw at you defensively, you could stop it.
So Steve Green graduates.
Steve Green graduates in 75.
What's our new lineup in 76?
Scott May, Quinn Buckner, Tom Abernathy, all right, Bobby Wilkerson, and myself.
What a team.
Well, thank you.
What was the closest game that year in the regular season?
Michigan. Michigan was a game. We sent that into overtime and ended up beating them in overtime. A Kentucky game down in Freedom Hall in Kentucky. But, you know, there was never any point in our games or a game that we were concerned that we would lose. I mean, we played our hearts out from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, and never thought about losing, because we always, Coach Knight always put us in situations where, different game situations where we might experience something that would be new to us, and we would practice different things, and we were ready for them.
I remember watching you as a kid, and it seemed like whenever Coach would call a timeout, you'd come out, and apparently you'd correct whatever you wanted corrected, and you would make a run. It was so fun to watch.
Absolutely, and you know, Coach Knight knew all the time. He was always prepared and always preparing us, making corrections. You know, and corrections are important for growth. And and see, a lot of people, a lot of the press and the media came down on Coach Knight because of how hard he was on the players. Well, we had practiced this. We were in this situation, so he got our attention, and that was his point, was to get our attention. So we would focus on him and focus on what he's saying to us. It wasn't about the crowd or anything else that happened. Coach had no tolerance for continued mental mistakes, and rightly so, because when he made those corrections, you needed to make those corrections on the court. You don't want to make mental mistakes.
I just read his book, The Power of Negative Thinking, which isn't quite what it sounds like. And it's all about that. It's all about thinking about the downside, eliminating mistakes, making corrections. He talks there in the book about his Methodist background. And can you describe what it was like, your relationship with him, with your faith?
Well, in the beginning, it was a struggle for me. Coach was very bombastic, which I wasn't used to. And at first, it caught me off guard. Even though I knew how he was, I was just a little off guard, and I focused on those things rather than focusing on what he's saying from a basketball standpoint. And as a freshman, about 10 games into the season, Coach Dave Bliss called me over after practice, and he said, hey, he says, I know Coach's language gets to you, and it bothers me too. He says, we can't change that. And he says, what I want you to do over the course of this next week is focus and concentrate on what he's saying from a basketball standpoint and block out everything else. And he says, you think you can do it? I said, well, let's have a try. He says, I'll help you. He says, when Coach gets upset and he flies off the handle, don't pay attention to that. That's just to get your attention. Focus on what he's saying from a basketball standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, because that's what's designed to help you get to where you need to get or where the players need to get to. And over the course of that week, I concentrated on that, and it really paid off. And there was many times that Coach would have a episode, and I'd just look over at Coach Bliss, and he'd say, basketball, 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 and that was a tremendous support because I learned from that. And it from those first 10 games, then it springboarded me into being a better player because I was then able to be coached and make the corrections that needed to be made rather than focusing on the distractions, which we all have in life. Satan is constantly throwing darts at us and fireballs and you name it, because he wants us to get distracted from our walk. And with that, I was still very involved with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. My freshman year, I was involved. My sophomore, junior, and senior year, I was president of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes huddle on campus. There was a couple of times the coach challenged me about that, and I wasn't going to leave the Fellowship of Christian Athletes because he pressured me. All right, we didn't have a conflict, but I didn't allow him to influence me in that way.
What Coach Bliss challenged you to do is very similar to what somebody challenged me to do, and he called it sifting. He says, sift through what you're hearing, affirm the wise, and just let the foolish go. Just affirm the wise, let the foolish go. Well, you got to tell us, what's it like to win a national championship and be undefeated? You're the last team to do it.
Wow. It's a dream come true. I look back over the time, energy, and effort in preparing to get to that point, and then I look at the time, energy, and effort and the expertise, knowledge, and experience that we had available to us, and the talent and the abilities of my teammates, and how all that was brought together. We had to beat Michigan 3 times. We beat them the first time at Chrysler Arena and up in Michigan. Excuse me. The second time we went into overtime in Assembly Hall. And they said, well, you might be able to beat Michigan twice, but you can't beat them 3 times. And in that national championship game against Michigan, the first 2 minutes of the game, we lose Bobby Wilkerson. Bobby gets an errant elbow to the forehead, knocks him out, knocks him unconscious. But, you know, we grouped together, we gathered ourselves together because we'd already been prepared because the year before we lost Scott May.
Mm-hmm.
And we went in at halftime, we were 8 points down. And our biggest concern was, how's Bobby Wilkerson? And Coach knew that was our concern. We needed to know how our teammate was after that injury. And he said, boys, he says, Bobby is doing fine. He's at the hospital. He's being under observation, and he's awake. He's doing fine. He says, gentlemen, he says, you've got an opportunity now to make history. He prophesied it. He says, you have an opportunity now in the next 20 minutes to make history. And who knew then, you know, that it would be history. 37 years of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, we came out and ended up beating Michigan 86-68. And
what a half.
Wasn't
that, it was one of the greatest halves in the history of basketball by a team.
Well, thank you.
Who played for Bobby Wilkerson?
Jimmy Kruse came in, and Jimmy Wissman.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we actually had, and Wayne Radford came in. So, Coach was using all those guys. And you know, people say, well, who was the toughest team you ever had to play against? You know, you'd think maybe Michigan or Kentucky or Minnesota or some of those. You know who the toughest team we had to play against was? Our second team.
Really?
Every day, day in and day out. They beat on us. They knew our plays. They forced us to a higher level.
Wow.
And there's no doubt that, in my mind, that those players made us better, and they were the toughest ones to play against.
Well, you were selected #1 in the NBA draft by the Milwaukee Bucks, and describe your stint through the NBA and how many years you played.
Well, first of all, I had an opportunity after we won the national championship. I was a junior. All of my teammates were seniors, and I had an opportunity to turn pro, and I chose to stay at Indiana University. Why? Because Coach Knight had made a commitment to me that he would be there my 4 years, and I in turn made a commitment to him.
Wow.
And
that's unique.
you know, I passed up a lot, but you know, if I had to do all over, I'd still do it the same way. So anyway, I was drafted #1 by the Milwaukee Bucks, and played 2.5 years with Milwaukee, 6.5 with Detroit, a year in Utah, a year in Cleveland, and a year in Italy for 12 years. And I got to experience in my NBA debut, I went up against the Los Angeles Lakers and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I outjumped him at the tip. Kareem's 7'2",
yeah.
Okay, long arms and what have you. I outjump him.
And you're 6'10",
6'10",
so to speak.
6'10", not 6'11".
No matter what the media says.
Never was I 6'11". Okay. We control the tip and come down, and Brian Winters takes a shot from outside and misses it. I go up and over Kareem and rebound and put the ball back in. On the way back down the court, he elbows me several times, and I beat him down to his spot on the block there where he could shoot his hook shot, his famous hook shot. And as he came barreling down there, he takes and drives his elbow right into my chest. And so we're jostling for position, and I just elbow him back. Nothing malicious, but elbow him back. But he put on a big act because we had 3 officials, one underneath official, one over to the right baseline, and one out front. And he put on an act like he was hurt. He bent over and kind of fell back 10 feet. And you can see him. He looks, see if the officials are looking. And I'm watching the ball come down the court because he's back behind me. And he takes a running start and sucker punches me right in the temple. Didn't knock me out, but it knocked me silly. I was seeing stars and birdies and everything else. But that he hit me so hard he broke his hand. He was out 21 days or 21 games, excuse me, and had the largest fine in NBA history at the time. Well, that gave me an opportunity to learn about forgiveness. And I had forgiven him. It was hard to do, no doubt. I had a lot of people saying, you know, you ought to sue him and you ought to do this, you ought to do that. But, you know, had I not been a Christian, I might have done that. But God brought a great peace about it to me through a lot of advisors, Christian advisors, people that I love and trust and care for, and who inspire me and encourage me and also hold me accountable.
Wow. Wow. You had an opportunity to apply your faith right there in the
Yes.
game. You're writing a book.
I am. It talks about being the very best that you can possibly be. And that's what excellence is about. Excellence is being the very best that you can be in everything that you do, in every way that you do it, no matter what it is that you're doing. It doesn't have to be sports, but whatever it is that you're doing, be the very best. Use your God-given talents and abilities and glorify Him through that. That's what He wants. You know, and God says in His Word, whatever thy hand finds to do, what? Do it with all thy might. Do it with all thy might. Do it the very best that you can. The great John Wooden, his definition of success is a peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing that you've done your best to become the best you're capable of becoming. And so this book is designed, it's not going to be long, but it's from my own experiences, learning experiences, failures, successes, successes of other people, failures of other people, and just, you know, I feel that God has inspired me to do that.
Kent, it's a blessing to have you here today. I just can't thank you enough for being with us on Restoration Road.
Mitchell, I'm honored and blessed.
Love you, man.
God bless you. Love you too.
Maybe like me, you're a recovering perfectionist. You have pursued flawlessness, and it's left you frustrated because it just doesn't happen outside of the God of the universe. Well, I encourage you to consider today to move from perfection to excellence. Whereas perfection is flawlessness, excellence is doing the best with what we have. And excellence requires humility and authenticity. We need to confess our shortcomings, and we also need to confess the gifts God's given us. And then we need to surrender those to Him. It's authentic. It's just the way we were designed. And then we do the best with what we have, and we continue to move on. I hope today you take Kent's words of how to have an excellent life, and that you would apply them to your life as you walk Restoration Road.